Hey, how we doing? Fired up to be with you on Dolphins today. Welcome one, welcome all. I am your host, Jake Rietman. If you love the offseason and more specifically draft talk, this is the Dolphins Today video for you. So roll up your sleeves and let's take a deep dive into what the Dolphins front office and Chris Grier have in store leading up to the 2024 NFL Draft, because finally the Dolphins have a first-round pick. It seems like it's been years and years. Well, it has been years. But let's take a look at exactly where the Dolphins will be drafting in the upcoming 2024 NFL Draft, pending any funny business or maybe potentially some solid and savvy business from the Dolphins front office if they make some trades. But here's where it stands right now. First round pick, 21st overall. Second round pick, 23rd, 55 overall, because remember, the wild card teams rotate that slot based on how they finish. So in the second round, it's actually the 23rd of the second round, 55th overall. None in the third, none in the fourth. Thanks a lot for the tampering. And then the fourth, that pick was traded to Denver in exchange. Well, part of the deal, that is, for Bradley Chubb. I'd say that was a pretty good deal. Then we're back picking in round 5, 6, and 7. You even have 2 in 6 there as well. So 6 picks in total. And before we even get going on this, the ultimate man in charge, of course, is the general manager. So let me know down in the comments, do you believe in Chris Grier? It's real simple. Type Y for yes or N for no. If you believe in Chris Grier, he's the general manager. He is running this draft. And based on the track record, it might be okay if you don't necessarily believe in him, because let's look at 2023, for example. As of now, that second round pick, Cam Smith. Yikes. Now, I know Vic Fangio wasn't a believer in Cam Smith, and he tweeted out the little unlocked emoji now that Vic Fangio has moved on and there will be a new defensive coordinator for the Dolphins. So I guess we'll give his rookie season, or lack thereof, since he didn't play hardly at all, a pass. But you can't miss on second-round picks. Now, obviously, he hit a home run with that third-round pick in Devon Achane. Credit to Chris Grier there, but the rest of the way, Elijah Higgins, no such luck. Ryan Hayes, no. So a lot riding on this upcoming draft for Chris Grier, because only one of those picks worked out from a year ago. And again, I guess we'll keep the book open on Cam Smith. It's too early to call him a bust, and especially with the new defensive coordinator, breath of fresh air. We'll see if that second-round pick, Cam Smith out of South Carolina, can help the Miami Dolphins. But based on that, and based on a lot of things, I think it's safe to assume that Chris Grier is on the hot seat as a general manager. What say you? Let me know down in the comments. It's real simple. Type Y for yes or N for no if you believe that Chris Grier is on the hot seat. Give me a Y. If you think, nah, he's fine, Rietma, give him a pass. He drafted Devon Achane. That was a home run pick. Type N for no. And I'll tell you this. Here's what I believe. This is a make it or break it type of draft for Chris Grier, the general manager for the Miami Dolphins. So he's got to improve, and he has more capitals. We told you there, we showed you that earlier, 6 picks in total, no third-round pick, no fourth-round pick. So those first 2 picks, oh my goodness, you got to find a way to rebuild this team through the draft in the areas of need. So let's take a look at that big board and where the Miami Dolphins could potentially address some of those needs and what those positional needs are. Here's what I've identified as where the Dolphins could use some reinforcements and build through the draft. I think we can all agree, offensive line, right? 12 different offensive line starting combinations throughout 2023 because of the injuries, because of the lack of depth. It was musical chairs rotating in and out. So I think you shore up the offensive line through the draft. Linebacker and the edge rusher position. I use the linebacker / edge because you talk about outside linebackers, guys like Andrew Van Ginkel, Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, Chubb, and Andrew Van Ginkel all were hurt this year despite having excellent seasons. And remember, Andrew Van Ginkel, a pending free agent. So perhaps building through the draft. I do want the Dolphins to re-sign him, but it's worth the conversation. I think the wide receiver room could use some help because we obviously have the best wide receiver in the NFL in Tyreek Hill. Jalen Waddle, probably the best 1-2 punch when you think about it. But after that, the production falls off. So I think the wide receiver room could certainly use some reinforcements and definitely some more depth. Same can be said about the defensive line position. And because you whiffed on Cam Smith, well, what seems to be a whiff right now, and Xavier Howard is a question mark because he's one of the highest paid players. And I don't know if you've heard this or not, but the Dolphins are in a terrible cap situation. So Xavier Howard might not be back, and that's where the cornerback position comes in. Somebody needs to line up on the other side of Jalen Ramsey and shore up that secondary. Now, as it relates to the offensive line, like I said, banged up all season, 12 different starting combinations, so some reinforcements may be ideal. And Connor Williams, Rob Hunt, both in need of new contracts. There's no guarantee that they'll both be back. If one will be back, either way, that could be a hole. And there's lots of different ways to evaluate offensive line play, but one of them is in pass block win rate. The Dolphins were one of the worst, next to last, in the National Football League in that stat. Now, that's not to say it was a bad offensive line. I think throughout when the Dolphins had success, the offensive line played pretty well. But to have the opportunity to add a staple in the first round from the offensive line might not be a bad direction to go. How about Jackson Powers Johnson? Arguably the most athletic offensive lineman in this draft class, played at Oregon. He has a lot of people excited. Mel Kiper right now has him kind of in that mid to late round in the first round. And a lot of this is going to change when the Miami Dolphins and the rest of the NFL attends the scouting combine. Because remember, these players are going to work out, and you'll get a chance to see them in a combine form, and that's going to change the way things fall. But right now, keep your eye on Jackson Powers Johnson as a guy the Dolphins could target. Speaking of Mel Kiper, his latest mock draft has the Dolphins selecting Troy Fautanu out of Washington, who was an excellent player and versatile enough to play both guard and tackle. I think the Dolphins would probably use him at guard if they were to draft him. But again, he comes from a big-name program, just like Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon, with the Miami Dolphins perhaps targeting Troy Fautanu from Washington, another big-name program. They had a tremendous season, making it all the way to the college football championship game. So those are two potential linemen to keep your eye on if you're the Miami Dolphins, and I think could certainly make an immediate impact to help the Aqua and Orange. Now, let's take a look at the second round mock draft because, like we said, we've got a pick in the first round, a pick in the second round before the Dolphins forfeited that third round pick. Now, for the second round, there's a lot of different directions to go with this one, but the latest mock draft out of The Athletic from Dane Brugler has the Dolphins selecting an edge rusher in Edgerrin Cooper. Played some linebacker and outside linebacker for Texas A&M. And is kind of perceived to be in that second round area. That's a position of need. I wouldn't be surprised if the Dolphins go that direction because when you look at the Dolphins' edge rushers, obviously Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb were excellent this season. Andrew Van Ginkel in need of a new contract. Emmanuel Ogbah, to me, is the number one cut candidate. He might not be back. And so certainly some areas to improve upon there if you're the Miami Dolphins. Now, the defense played pretty well this season, and there's a lot up in the air with Vic Fangio departing to become the Philadelphia Eagles defensive coordinator. That search for a new defensive coordinator is underway for the Dolphins, interviewing tons of different top candidates. But I think you could say most importantly from a defensive perspective, Miami got pressure on the opposing quarterbacks last season. A big reason why you saw that defense go like this throughout the season, get better and better each and every week. Third most sacks, second best sack rate in the NFL. And what's most important here is how crucial this second round pick is. Because again, Cam Smith, it remains to be seen if he's a bust or not. But last year, that's who you picked in the second round, and he didn't make an immediate impact. You can't have that again. You can't whiff on the second round, especially when you consider the Miami Dolphins don't have a third round pick and don't have a fourth round pick. Now, will Chris Grier get creative and maybe move some assets and try to move up to get a third round pick? That remains to be seen. But picks rounds number 1 and 2 is where you have an opportunity to draft day one starters draft day one impact players that can help your team in the immediate future. So if you look at the wide receiver room, that's another position I've identified that the Dolphins could certainly add some depth to. And this is a very deep draft class as it relates to the wide receiver position. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be a top 5 pick. Malik Neighbors out of LSU, Rome Odunze out of Washington, Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU, Troy Franklin. All those guys are probably going in the first round. However, to the next side of the page, Ladd McConkey out of Georgia, Tez Walker out of North Carolina. He's going to be a combine freak. Keon Coleman had a good year for Florida State after transferring from Michigan State. A.D. Mitchell, a guy to keep your eye on. And Xavier Legette is getting player comps to Deebo Samuel. So if these guys are available in the second round, it might be a great opportunity for the Dolphins to grab a top caliber wide receiver. Because you look at the Dolphins offense in 2023 with Frank Smith as the coordinator, they were very productive through the air. We all know that. Tua led the NFL in passing and passing yards, I should say. But look at the production. It was all from Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. They accounted for 62% of the receiving yards on this Dolphins roster. And so when you consider that, you got to have the ability to allocate passes to somebody else. It can't always just be Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Accounting for 62% of the receiving yards is mind-boggling. Durham Smythe at the tight end was your third leading receiver. And Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert were both good out of the backfield. But imagine pairing a third wide receiver to this offense. They could be even better in 2024. And again, I'm talking second round here. It might be a little bit of a reach, maybe a luxury pick, so let me know what you think in the comments. Do you want the Dolphins to draft a wide receiver early, and I'm talking rounds 1 or 2, or pass on that position? Let me know down in the comments. Type D for draft or P for pass. And the wide receiver discussion is so interesting because sometimes you can find impact players later in the round at the wide receiver position. The list goes on and on about impact wide receivers that were drafted late. You look at Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Detroit Lions, Deebo Samuel, and even Brandon Ayuk. Those are impact players that weren't necessarily first-round picks. And so the point being, you can help your wide receiver room immensely, and it doesn't always have to be in the first round. So let me know what you think. Type D for draft or P for pass. Now, yes, the season is over, but the content doesn't stop. We're talking draft. We're talking coaching rumors. We're talking roster rumors, free agency. You name it, we got it covered on Dolphins Today. That's why you subscribe. And let your voice be heard, too. Get in those comments and let me know what you think. Shout out to my producer today, Colin Brown, keeping us on the air, building left and right and helping make Dolphins Today possible. We salute you today, Colin. Salute each and every one of you tuning in to Dolphins Today. Thanks so much for making us a part of your day. And we'll see you next time on Dolphins Today.